Hey guys, my name is PewDiePie. Today I am with Rodger Bumpass, aka the voice of Squidward. What is your favorite SpongeBob episode?
My favorite SpongeBob episode is probably The Sponge Who Could Fly. It's a really heartwarming and funny episode, and it always makes me smile. I love the way SpongeBob and Patrick work together to help each other achieve their dreams, and I think it's a really sweet story. It's also a good reminder to never give up on your dreams, no matter how crazy they may seem.
Do you also want to quit the Krusty Krab?
Well, I've definitely thought about it. The Krusty Krab can be a really stressful and draining place to work, and I'm not always sure if it's worth it. But at the same time, I've been there for so long that it's become a part of my life. I'm not sure if I could ever really leave it behind completely.
What if you leave the Bikini Bottom for sample? Where to go?
If I left Bikini Bottom, I think I would like to go somewhere peaceful and quiet. I've lived in a busy, chaotic place for so long, and I think I would appreciate a change of pace. I'd like to live somewhere where I can just relax and enjoy nature, away from the hustle and bustle of the city. Maybe I'd even get a pet, like a cat or a dog, to keep me company.
Do you remember the episode where SpongeBob and Patrick are being pirates?
Yes, I remember that episode. SpongeBob and Patrick were pretending to be pirates, and they were causing all sorts of chaos. They were running around the Krusty Krab, yelling and screaming, and it was so annoying. I was trying to work, but they were just in the way and making a mess. I was so frustrated with them, and I was just glad when that episode was over.
Do you remember the episode where you and Patrick are trapped in a jar?
Yes, I do remember that episode. It was a really strange and surreal experience. I was trapped in a jar with Patrick, and we were both trying to get out. But the jar was sealed tight, and we couldn't figure out how to open it. It was a really frustrating and stressful situation, and we were both panicking. But eventually, we managed to escape, and it was a huge relief.
Do you remember the episode where you and SpongeBob were playing hide and seek?
Yes, I do remember that episode. It was a really fun game of hide and seek. We were both hiding and trying to find each other, and it was really exciting. I was hiding behind a couch, and I thought I was being really sneaky. But then SpongeBob found me, and I was so surprised. It was a really fun and lighthearted episode, and it was a nice change from the usual chaos of the Krusty Krab.
What episode do you hate?
There are a few episodes that I don't really like. I think the episode where I was turned into a ghost was pretty strange, and I didn't like the way I looked. I also didn't like the episode where I was stuck in the time machine because it was so confusing and frustrating, and the episode where I was a superhero was just embarrassing. I'm not a fan of any of those episodes.
As you mentioned before, time machine, what was the scariest thing?
The scariest thing about the time machine was that I was stuck there for so long. I didn't know how long it would be before I would be able to get out, and I was starting to lose hope. I was scared that I would never see my friends or family again, and that I would be trapped in that machine forever. It was a really terrifying experience, and I'm glad I was able to get out.
Do you remember the episode where you were turned into a cat?
Yes, I remember that episode. It was a very strange and confusing experience. I woke up one morning and I was a cat, and I had no idea what had happened. I was so scared and confused, and I didn't know what to do. I was trying to act like a cat, but it was so hard. I couldn't talk, and I couldn't use my hands. It was a really strange and frustrating experience, and I'm glad it was just a one-time thing.
Is your favorite SpongeBob movie? As Rodger Bumpass.
My favorite SpongeBob movie is probably the SpongeBob movie, Sponge Out of Water. It's a fun and lighthearted movie, and it has a lot of great jokes and references. I also really like the story and how it shows that even though we may have our differences, we can still come together and work together to solve problems. It's a really uplifting and positive movie, and I always enjoy watching it. It was a great movie.
You was in the movie, correct? Heavy Metal.
Yes, I was in the movie Heavy Metal. I played the role of a villain named Metal Face, who was a robot with a metal face. It was a really fun and challenging role, and I enjoyed working with the rest of the cast. I'm not sure if I'll ever do another movie again, but it was definitely an interesting experience.
Invader Zim, enter the Florpus.
I was in the movie Invader Zim Enter the Florpus. I played the role of Invader Scooge, who was one of the main villains in the movie. It was a very different role from what I'm used to, but I had a lot of fun playing the part. I think it was a great movie, and I'm glad to have been a part of it.
As Invader Scooge, what was the hardest scene?
The hardest scene for me was probably the fight scene between Invader Scooge and Invader Zim. It was a very intense and physical scene, and I had to really put in a lot of effort to get it right. It was also a very emotional scene because we were both so invested in the fight. I'm glad that it turned out so well, but it was definitely a challenging scene to film.
What's the funny scene?
The funniest scene in the movie was probably when Invader Scooge was trying to get Invader Zim to join his team. He was trying to convince him to help him take over the world, and he was using all sorts of persuasive techniques. But Invader Zim was having none of it, and he kept refusing to join. It was a really funny and lighthearted scene, and I think it really captured the personalities of both characters.
Inside Out producer member.
Yes. I was also a producer on the movie Inside Out. I was involved in the development and production of the movie, and I helped to make sure that it was a successful and well-made film. It was a great experience, and I'm glad I was able to be a part of such a successful and beloved movie.
You were in, this was correct, Shrek Guard's village.
Yes, I was also in the movie Shrek. I played the role of one of the guards in the village. It was a small part, but I was glad to be a part of such a successful franchise. I had a lot of fun working with the other actors and crew, and I think the movie turned out really well.
Did you have fun with Mike Myers and Eddie Murphy?
Yes. I had a lot of fun working with Mike Myers and Eddie Murphy. They are both very talented and funny actors, and they made the filming process a lot of fun. We would often joke around and have a good time, and I think that really helped to create a positive atmosphere on set. It was a great experience, and I'm glad I got to work with them.
What the hardest scene with Eddie Murphy?
Hardest scene with Eddie Murphy was probably when we were filming a scene where he was arguing with one of the other characters. It was a very emotional and intense scene, and we had to really get into the characters and their motivations. Eddie is a very talented actor, and he made it look so easy, but it was a difficult scene to film, and I had to really push myself to keep up with him.
What's the funniest scene? With Mike Myers.
The funniest scene with Mike Myers was probably when we were filming a scene where he was doing a silly dance. It was a very lighthearted and funny moment, and we all had a good laugh. Mike is a very funny guy, and he really knows how to make people laugh. It was a really fun scene to film, and I'm glad that it turned out so well.
You was in this Ride Toxic Crusaders. You plays as Toxie, Dr. Killamoff.
Yes, I was in the movie Toxic Crusaders. I played the role of Toxie, who was one of the main characters in the movie. It was a really different role for me, and I had to get into the mindset of a superhero. It was a lot of fun playing the part, and I'm glad that I was able to be a part of such a unique and exciting movie.
As Dr. Killamoff. What's the hardest scene?
The hardest scene as Dr. Killamoff was probably the fight scene with the villain. It was a very intense and physical scene, and I had to really get into the character's head and understand his motivations. It was a really challenging scene to film, but I think I did a good job. I also had to do a lot of stunts and dunzwa, which were very difficult.
What funny ass Toxie?
Funniest scene as Toxie was when I was trying to convince the other Toxic Crusaders to join me in my fight against the villains. I was using all sorts of persuasive techniques, but they were all very stubborn and wouldn't listen to me. It was a really funny and lighthearted scene, and I think it really showed my character's personality.
You was in this movie, The Running Man. You play as Phil Hilton. You work with Arnold Schwarzenegger as Ben Richards.
Yes, I was in the movie The Running Man. I played the role of Phil Hilton, who was one of the main characters in the movie. It was a really exciting and intense role, and I had a lot of fun working with Arnold Schwarzenegger. He was a great actor, and I learned a lot from him. It was a very challenging movie to film, but I'm glad that I was able to be a part of it.
What the hard scene with Arnold Schwarzenegger?
The hardest scene with Arnold Schwarzenegger was probably when we were filming a scene where he was chasing me. It was a very fast-paced and intense scene, and we had to really focus on the action. It was a very physical scene, and we were both running around and doing stunts. It was a very challenging scene to film, but it was also a lot of fun.
What ER favorite moment with Stephen King and Richard Dawson, Damon Killian?
My favorite moment with Stephen King and Richard Dawson was when we were filming a scene where we were all in the same room together. It was a very intense and emotional scene, and we were all really getting into our characters. We were all really invested in the scene, and it was a great experience. I really enjoyed working with Stephen King and Richard Dawson, and I think we made a great team.
Do you remember what Stephen King told you?
Stephen King told me that I was a great actor and that he was impressed with my work. He said that I had a lot of talent and potential and that he thought I would go far in the industry. He also said that he was glad to have worked with me and that he hoped we could work together again in the future.
Ice Age. The Meltdown. You play as additional voices.
Yes, I was in the movie Ice Age, The Meltdown. I played the role of additional voices, which was a small part. I didn't have many lines, but I still had a lot of fun working on the movie. It was a really cute and funny movie, and I'm glad that I got to be a part of it.
Toy Story 2. You play as Clerk.
Yes, I was also in the movie Toy Story 2. I played the role of Clerk, who was one of the employees at the toy store. It was a very small part, but I still had a lot of fun with it. I enjoyed working with the other actors and crew, and I thought the movie turned out really well.
What was the hard scene with John Lasseter?
The hardest scene with John Lasseter was when we were filming a scene where he was playing the role of Buzz Lightyear. It was a very emotional and intense scene, and we had to really get into the characters' heads and understand their motivations. John Lasseter is a very talented actor, and he made the scene very real and believable. It was a very challenging scene to film, but we all worked hard and did a great job.
What funny scene with Tom Hanks?
The funniest scene with Tom Hanks was when we were filming a scene where he was playing the role of Woody. It was a very lighthearted and funny scene, and we were all laughing and having a good time. Tom Hanks is a very funny guy, and he really brought out that side of his character in the scene. It was a very enjoyable scene to film, and I'm glad we were able to capture that humor on camera.
You was in the movie Megamind?
Yes, I was also in the movie Megamind. I played the role of additional voices, which was a small part. It was a really fun movie, and I enjoyed being a part of it. I didn't have many lines, but I still had a lot of fun working on the movie. It was a very creative and imaginative film, and I'm glad I got to be a part of it.
What's the hardest scene?
The hardest scene with Megamind was when we were filming a scene where he was fighting against the other superheroes. It was a very intense and action-packed scene, and we had to really focus on our characters and their motivations. It was a very physical scene, and we were all really getting into it. We worked hard to make sure that the scene was believable and exciting, and I think we did a great job.
What was the funniest with Will Ferrell, Megamind, Tom McGrath, Lord Scott, Pris, Ben Stiller, Bernard?
The funniest scene with Will Ferrell, Megamind, Tom McGrath, Lord Scott, and Ben Stiller was when we were filming a scene where they were all trying to convince Megamind to join them. It was a very funny and lighthearted scene, and we were all laughing and having a good time. Will Ferrell is a very funny guy, and he really brought out that humor in the scene. It was a really enjoyable scene to film, and I'm glad we were able to capture that humor on camera.
Why did you take a break from acting?
I decided to take a break from acting because I wanted to focus on other things in my life. I had been acting for many years, and I felt like I needed some time to explore other interests and passions. I also felt like I needed a break from the pressure and stress of the entertainment industry. I wanted to take a step back and just enjoy life for a while, without any commitments or deadlines.
Do you plan to come back to acting?
I'm not sure yet if I'll come back to acting. I still enjoy acting, and I may decide to do some smaller roles here and there. But I'm also enjoying the freedom and flexibility that comes with not being tied down to a specific schedule or project. I'm just taking things one day at a time and seeing where life takes me.
What the biggest fear about acting?
My biggest fear about acting was always the pressure to perform well. I always felt like there was a lot of pressure to be perfect, and that if I didn't do a good job, it would reflect badly on me. I was always worried that people would judge me based on my acting and that they would think I wasn't good enough. It was a very stressful and nerve-wracking experience, and I'm glad that I'm no longer in that situation.
Did you like Handsome Squidward?
I actually really liked Handsome Squidward. It was a fun and lighthearted character, and it was nice to have a different side of me portrayed on screen. I thought it was a funny and creative way to show a different side of my personality, and I enjoyed playing the role. It was also a great way to connect with my fans, and I was glad that they enjoyed the character too.
Why is Squidward not happy?
Well, he's not really depressed. It's just the fact that he has to deal with SpongeBob's never-ending generosity, Patrick's buffoonery, and Mr. Krabs' greediness. Squidward is one of the more intelligent people of Bikini Bottom, and he is very sarcastic and particular.
What sin is Squidward?
Every character in the series may have prominent flaws, but they are not the only flaws or sins they show. For example, Squidward is shown to represent wrath.
Is Squidward a good guy?
Squidward JQ Tentacles is the deuteragonist of the Bikini Bottom horror. He is an anthropomorphic octopus who, after SpongeBob had been killed by the tortured one, chose to reform himself from a lazy, arrogant egotist to a selfless, slightly sarcastic hero that helped save Bikini Bottom.
Who is Squidward jealous of?
Squilliams. Squidward is painfully jealous of Squilliam's success and schemes constantly to show him he isn't a loser. As such, whenever Squilliam appears, Squidward usually ultimately comes out on top, though there are a few exceptions to this.
What is Squidward allergic to?
In SpongeBob SquarePants, Squidward is shown to be allergic to snails and sea berries. However, there are some inconsistencies in these depictions. Explanation: in The Great Snail Race, Squidward has a pet snail. In I Was a Teenage Gary, Squidward has no allergies while caring for Gary. In Restraining SpongeBob, it is stated that Squidward is allergic to sea berry.
What is your favorite food to eat?
I really love eating seafood, especially squid. I also enjoy trying new and unique dishes from around the world. One of my favorite meals is a good old-fashioned fish and chips. I also really enjoy sushi and other types of Japanese cuisine. I'm always up for trying something new, and I love discovering new flavors and ingredients.
How old is Squidward in human years?
Squidward is approximately 26 to 30 years old because, going back to Camp Corral, he was about 12 years old during the show. Mr. Krabs and Plankton are in their late 60s and 70s. Sandy shares the same age as SpongeBob and Patrick.
1. Did you hate the Krabby Patty in the first place and you try to sneak in to eat it, caught red-handed by SpongeBob?
I hated the Krabby Patty because it was so greasy and unhealthy. I was always trying to sneak one in and eat it, but SpongeBob would always catch me. I hated how he was always watching me, and I felt like he was always judging me. It was very frustrating and annoying, but I guess I should have known better than to try and sneak a Krabby Patty in the first place.
Why is Mr. Krabs such a jerk?
Mr. Krabs is a jerk because he is greedy and selfish. He is always looking out for himself, and he doesn't care about anyone else's feelings or needs. He is only interested in making money, and he will do whatever it takes to get it. He is also very manipulative, and he will do anything to get what he wants. He is a very toxic person, and he is not someone you would want to be around for very long.
What was the worst thing you did to SpongeBob?
The worst thing I ever did to SpongeBob was probably when I threw him into a giant trash can and tried to leave him there. It was a very mean and cruel thing to do, and I felt really bad about it later. I was just so frustrated and angry with him at the time, and I let my emotions get the best of me. I'm not proud of it, and I've learned a lot since then.
Why is Squidward always so grumpy?
Squidward is always so grumpy because he has a lot of responsibilities and pressures in his life. He is the only one in his family who has a job, and he is expected to provide for everyone else. He also has to deal with SpongeBob's never-ending positivity and enthusiasm, which can be very draining. Squidward is also very insecure and self-conscious, and he is always worried that people don't like him or think he is stupid. All of these things can make him very grumpy and frustrated.
Is there any good memories with Squidward? When did the voice...
Yes, there are definitely some good memories with Squidward. We've had many funny and entertaining moments together, and I really enjoy working with him. We've also had some more serious and emotional moments, and I think it's important to have that balance in a relationship. As for the voice, it's actually a pretty simple process. I just have to make sure I'm speaking clearly and using the right inflections and tones, and then I can create the character's voice.
How was it working with the cast?
Working with the cast was a really great experience. We all got along well, and we had a lot of fun together. We were all very professional and dedicated to the project, but we also had a lot of laughs and good times. It was a very collaborative process, and I think that's what made it so successful. We all worked hard to make sure that the show was the best it could be, and I'm really proud of what we accomplished together.
Can you tell me a joke?
Sure. I can tell you a joke. Why did the octopus go to the bank? To check his squid account. Get it? Squid account? Because octopuses have 8 legs, and they're called octopuses, and squid have 8 legs, and they're called squid. So I guess the joke is that octopuses have a bank account for squids. It's not the funniest joke in the world, but it's still a little bit funny, right?
What's your favorite song from the show?
My favorite song from the show is probably Sweet Victory. It's such a catchy and uplifting song, and I love the way it captures the energy and excitement of the show. It's also a very iconic song, and it's always a pleasure to hear it. I also really like Ripped Pants, and I Want to Be a Tree. Both of those songs are very silly and funny, and they always make me laugh.
Can you tell me a creepypasta?
Mr. Widemouth. During my childhood, my family was like a drop of water in a vast river, never remaining in one location for long. We settled in Rhode Island when I was 8, and there we remained until I went to college in Colorado Springs. Most of my memories are rooted in Rhode Island, but there are fragments in the attic of my brain which belong to the various homes we had lived in when I was much younger. Most of these memories are unclear and pointless, chasing after another boy in the backyard of a house in North Carolina, trying to build a raft to float on the creek behind the apartment we rented in Pennsylvania, and so on. But there is one set of memories which remains as clear as glass, as though they were just made yesterday. I often wonder whether these memories are simply lucid dreams produced by the long sickness I experienced that spring, but in my heart, I know they are real. We were living in a house just outside the bustling metropolis of New Vineyard, Maine, population 643. It was a large structure, especially for a family of 3. There were a number of rooms that I didn't see in the 5 months we resided there. In some ways, it was a waste of space, but it was the only house on the market at the time, at least within an hour's commute to my father's place of work. The day after my 5th birthday, attended by my parents alone, I came down with a fever. The doctor said I had mononucleosis, which meant no rough play and more fever for at least another 3 weeks. It was horrible timing to be bedridden. We were in the process of packing our things to move to Pennsylvania, and most of my things were already packed away in boxes, leaving my room barren. My mother brought me ginger ale and books several times a day, and these served the function of being my primary form of entertainment for the next few weeks. Boredom always loomed just around the corner, waiting to rear its ugly head and compound my misery. I don't exactly recall how I met Mr. Widemouth. I think it was about a week after I was diagnosed with mono. My first memory of the small creature was asking him if he had a name. He told me to call him Mr. Widemouth because his mouth was large. In fact, everything about him was large in comparison to his body, his head, his eyes, his crooked ears, but his mouth was by far the largest. Mr. Widemouth stopped and gave me a puzzled look. "Furby? What's a Furby?" he asked. I shrugged. "Oh." Mr. Widemouth resumed his activity. You don't need one of those. Wide mouth disappearing every time my mother stopped by to check in on me. I lay under your bed, he later explained. I don't want your parents to see me because I'm afraid they won't let us play anymore.
Can you tell me one of your life experiences?
Sure. I can tell you about one of my life experiences. When I was a child, I went on a trip with my family to visit my grandparents. It was a long drive, and we had to stop at a few different places along the way. We stopped at a few restaurants, and we also stopped at a few rest stops. We also had to stop at a gas station to fill up the car. It was a long and tiring trip, but it was also very exciting. I remember feeling so excited to see my grandparents, and I also remember feeling very tired and exhausted from the long drive.
In your opinion, what's the scariest thing about Mr. Widemouth?
Mr. Widemouth has a lot of creepy and unsettling qualities, but I think the scariest thing about him is his appearance. He is very tall and skinny, with large eyes and a wide mouth. His skin is also very pale, and he has no hair or eyebrows. He looks like a creature from a nightmare, and he is very unnerving to look at. Additionally, he has a very ominous presence, and he is always watching you. He is always lurking in the shadows, and he seems to know everything about you. He is definitely not someone you want to meet in a dark alley.
Do you have any social media?
Here, my social media, Instagram, Reel, Rodger Bumpass, Facebook, Rodger Bumpass, my Twitter, Rodger Bumpass.
Do you have a favorite movie?
Yes, I have a favorite movie. It's a classic film from the 1940s called The Wizard of Oz. It's a timeless story about a girl named Dorothy who is transported to a magical land called Oz. I love the characters, the music, and the overall message of the film. It's a very uplifting and inspiring movie, and I can watch it over and over again without getting bored. It's a classic for a reason, and it will always be one of my favorites.
What is your favorite song?
My favorite song is Somewhere Over the Rainbow from The Wizard of Oz. It's a very beautiful and uplifting song, and it always makes me feel hopeful and optimistic. I love the way it captures the magic and wonder of the movie, and I always get goosebumps when I hear it. It's a classic song that will always be close to my heart.
Do you believe in aliens?
I do believe in aliens. I think it's very unlikely that we are the only intelligent life form in the universe. There are billions of galaxies and planets out there, and it's hard to believe that we are the only ones. It's also possible that there are other forms of life that we haven't even discovered yet. So yes, I do believe in aliens, and I think it's an exciting and fascinating topic to explore.
Do you have any phobias?
Yes, I have a few phobias. I have a fear of heights, which is pretty common. I also have a fear of spiders, and I'm not a big fan of small enclosed spaces. I'm also a bit claustrophobic, so I don't like being in tight spaces for too long. I'm also afraid of drowning, which is probably a common fear for most people. I'm sure there are a few other things that I'm afraid of, but those are the main ones that come to mind.
What's your favorite holiday?
My favorite holiday is Christmas. I love the decorations, the music, the food, and the overall spirit of the season. I also love spending time with my family and friends, and I enjoy giving and receiving gifts. It's a very special time of year, and I always look forward to it. I also love the fact that Christmas is a time for giving and kindness, and I try to make it a point to be extra nice and generous to others during this time of year.
Do you want to say anything to your friends and family?
Yes, I would like to say something to my friends and family. I want to say thank you for all the love and support you have given me throughout my life. I'm very grateful for the people in my life. I also want to say that I love you all very much, and I'm looking forward to making more memories together in the future.
What do you want to say about your haters?
I want to say that I know who I am and what I'm capable of, and that's all that matters. I'm not going to let the opinions of others define me or my worth. I'm going to keep doing what I love and what makes me happy, and I'm going to keep being the best version of myself.
What is your favorite thing to do in your spare time?
My favorite thing to do in my spare time is to read. I love getting lost in a good book and exploring different worlds and stories. I also enjoy listening to music. watching movies and television shows, and spending time with my friends and family. I'm also a big fan of cooking, and I like trying new recipes and experimenting in the kitchen. I'm also a big fan of video games, and I enjoy playing different types of games. I also like going for walks and exploring the outdoors, and I try to stay active whenever I can.
Goodbye. Thanks for coming.
It was my pleasure to answer your questions. Give this video a big thumbs up and like, share, and subscribe. My name is Rodger Bumpass. I'm signing out. Peace. Maybe in your future, go through this again because this is fun to answer all these questions with you because I can go on and on.
Before in it, can you the iconic Squidward laugh for me?
Yes, I can definitely do the iconic Squidward laugh. It's a very distinctive laugh, and I've been doing it for many years. So here it is in all its glory. I hope that was good enough for you.
Can you tell me one more creepy pasta before I end it?
Robert the Doll. In the late 1800s, Thomas Otto and his family moved into a mansion at the corner of Eaton and Simonton Streets in Key West, Florida, now known as the Artist House. The Ottos were known to be stern with their servants, sometimes even mistreating them. It was the treatment of one such Haitian servant that provides a twist in this story. This woman was hired to take care of their son, Robert. One day, Mrs. Otto supposedly witnessed her practicing black magic in their backyard and fired her. Before she left, the woman gave Robert a lifelike doll which stood 3 feet tall, had buttons for eyes, human hair believed to be Robert's, and was filled with straw. Dolls that resembled children were not unheard of during this time, but this one proved to be special. Robert named the doll after himself and often dressed it in his clothes. Robert, the doll, became his trustworthy companion. He took it with him on shopping trips into town. The doll had a seat at the dinner table where Robert would sneak it bites of food when his parents weren't looking. Robert would even be tucked into bed with the boy at night. Soon this innocent relationship took on a strange nature. Soon after, Robert chose to be referred to by his middle name, Gene, after being scolded by his mother. He told her that Robert was the doll's name, not his. Gene was often heard in his toy room having conversations with Robert. Gene would say something in his childish manner, and responses could be heard in a much lower voice. Sometimes Gene would become very agitated, worrying the servants and his mother. She would, on occasion, burst in to find her son cowering in a corner, while Robert sat perched in a chair or on the bed glaring at him. This was only the beginning. Household objects would be found thrown across the room, Gene's toys turned up mutilated, and giggling could be heard. Whenever these unusual acts took place, Gene always said, "Robert did it." The boy took the punishment, but always insisted that the blame was Robert's. As the mischief grew, more and more servants took their leave as new ones were hired. The Otto's relatives felt it was time to do something. With the recommendation of a great aunt, Gene's parents removed Robert from his care and placed him in a box in the attic. This is where he resided for many years. After the death of his father, Gene was willed his boyhood home. He decided to live in the Victorian mansion with his new wife. Gene had become an artist and felt the house was spacious and would provide a place for him to paint. He went to the attic and dusted off his childhood toy. He became attached to the doll despite his wife's displeasure. Gene would take the doll along with them everywhere they went. He even sat in his favorite little chair while Gene and his wife slept nearby. The turret room became Robert's domain after Mrs. Otto moved him back to the attic. Their marriage slowly became sour until Mrs. Otto supposedly went insane and died of unknown reasons. Gene followed soon behind.
Can you say one more thing about yourself?
Yes, I can say one more thing about myself. I am a very creative person, and I enjoy making art and writing stories. I also love listening to music and watching movies and television shows. I am a big fan of science fiction and fantasy, and I love exploring different worlds and possibilities. I am also a very compassionate and empathetic person, and I care deeply about others. I always try to see the good in people, and I believe in the power of kindness and love.